Hey guys, today I'll be talking about some Space Marine 2 news, comments from the devs on the potential of Lightning Claws or a Heroic Chainaxe variant, on top of confirmations about whether we will ever see Heretic Astartes in PvE operations, Firstborn armor customization, or additional cloaks for all classes. We'll also be talking about a recent interview the creative director of Saber Interactive had about whether or not there will be Necrons in Space Marine 3 and its release date. Now, the first thing I want to talk about here are Lightning Claws. Lightning Claws have to be the single most requested melee weapon in Space Marine 2 beyond even two-handed weapons like a heavy eviscerator, and recently Saber made a comment saying they were prioritizing greatswords over something like claws, but they also said when asked directly if they were adding Lightning Claws that they have absolutely no plans for this weapon currently. Now, a lot of people are very upset that they are not prioritizing Lightning Claws, especially since there's a champion skin for the Assault class based on the Raven Guard chapter coming in patch 12, one that looks awfully like their recent chapter master model that is also equipped with Lightning Claws, and since Raven Guard Assault's whole thing is stealth diving onto enemies and ripping them apart with weapons such as these, a lot of people were hoping we would see them implemented. But unfortunately that is not the case, and there are zero plans for Lightning Claws at the current moment. And now obviously they're not saying we'll never get Lightning Claws in Space Marine 2, but if we do, it is highly unlikely we will see it in year 2, and Saber Interactive really only likes adding one major melee weapon per year with the Power Axe that was released in patch 10, and the Omni-Psi Axe is coming in patch 12 with the Tech Marine class. So with the news of a greatsword being prioritized, we'll at best see Lightning Claws in year 3 given historical data, but I'll be real, I have my doubts we will ever see Lightning Claws in this game, even though you actually see Lightning Claws presented in the tabletop models more than two-handed weapons in a lot of cases. Now, regardless of which melee weapon they decide to add, I'm glad that they have plans to add more melee weapons at all, because I much prefer new melee weapons to new ranged weapons in this game. I feel they open up the most gameplay options, and the previously added Power Axe is currently my favorite melee weapon in Space Marine 2 after the block variant got buffed to use power stance. Hopefully they change their minds on Lightning Claws, but let me know what you guys think about Saber's comments about this and what melee weapon you would want added to the game first. Now, speaking of other melee weapons, Saber was also asked about a Chainaxe variant for the Power Axe. The Power Axe is currently one of the strongest melee weapons in the game, and some players have been asked about getting special heroic variants that would change this weapon into a Chainaxe with some new effects. Saber did actually respond to this directly and said that Games Workshop themselves said no. They said they would not allow it, which makes it sound like they actually plan on doing something like this for the Power Axe and potentially other heroic variants in Space Marine 2 before this happened. Now, every weapon in Space Marine 2 is set to have at least 2 heroic versions for players to unlock eventually, but it sounds like having all new versions of the weapon like a Chainaxe is completely out of the question at the moment. Now, on the note of cosmetic customization, players have been asking for Deathwatch cosmetics or a champion pack for a long ass time in Space Marine 2. The opening scene of the campaign is about a firstborn Deathwatch kill team after all that said it's Deathwatching time and died to a bunch of Hormigons and Termagants, but the major takeaway here is that they looked amazing while they were dying. So naturally, we all want some Deathwatch cosmetics, and many players also want firstborn cosmetics, and Saber actually responded to both of these questions. Somebody asked the Saber community manager if we will ever see more firstborn armor pieces other than helmets. It might not be canonically accurate, but it'd be cool to see parts from Titus's Deathwatch armor set. And Sister Hylia, the community manager, said very low chances to see firstborn anything. So there you have it, folks. Unfortunately, you are unlikely to see any firstborn stuff beyond like Mark 7 helmets and stuff like that. Now, there is actually better news for a standalone Deathwatch Primaris cosmetic in that they are confirmed coming to Space Marine 2 eventually. Saber said this in the December community update. There is even an entire section of the Year 2 roadmap for a redacted cosmetic pack, which is in all likelihood a Deathwatch cosmetic pack, unless they intend to have this come out in Year 3 or as like a completely separate DLC pack. The Year 2 pass has one of these coming up with the upcoming heads and voice lines that will be sold separately. I'm a huge fan of Deathwatch personally, so I hope this is the case, but let me know what you guys think about the redacted cosmetic pack or the confirmation of more Primaris Deathwatch cosmetics. And now a feature I really want added to Space Marine 2 is more cloak customization. As it stands, we only have like 2 pauldrons with cloaks on them, and Sniper is the only class with a cape selection. Mods like Astartes Overhaul have added these to all classes on top of regalia such as Iron Halos, and in the most recent update for the Astartes Overhaul, you can even recreate Captain Titus from the 500 Worlds box set and the cinematic, which is pretty damn cool. But as far as vanilla Space Marine 2 is concerned, Saber said that they have no plans for cloak customization on other classes, and if they're not doing cloaks, I really doubt they're going to add anything like Iron Halos for other classes either. There is a reason the Ultramarine Iron Halo Twitch drop is only on Heavy and not Bulwark, even though it's actually inspired by Sergeant Matoris, and it's because Heavy is the only class in the entire game that actually has an Iron Halo selection, so they literally could not give the Sergeant Matoris Iron Halo to Bulwark, even though Sergeant Matoris is basically just a Blade Guard. I'll be real, I think this is really disappointing, and Cloak customization is severely undercooked in this game. You can't even change the color from the gross looking gray to something more driptastic, so hopefully they change their mind on this, but I'm not going to hold my breath. And speaking of highly requested features, one of the things I've seen people ask for in Space Marine 2 since launch are Heretic Astartes PvE operations, and whether or not we will ever get Chaos customization for operations. Now, Chaos Marines are already in the PvP game modes with regular and recently added champion skins for Alpha Legion, World Eaters, Death Guard, Iron Warriors, Black Legion, and my personal favorite, the Night Lords. Now, Saber already confirmed we will never see Emperor's Children or Thousand Sons in Space Marine 2 as Chaos factions, but they've also confirmed that the Fun Police at Games Workshop said they were not allowed to add Heretic Astartes to PvE. Now, that may be disappointing news to some, but keep in mind, this was not them saying they would never make an exclusive Heretic PvE mode at some point in the future, just that Heretics will not be added to the current operations or stratagems game modes. And now, Saber's allocation of resources has always been kind of strange. They do add things for niche game modes like PvP, or we got champion skins in patch 10.0 for Chaos, which is something I and many others never thought we'd see in this game, let alone for free, considering pretty much all other free cosmetics are not remotely as extravagant as a champion skin, let alone a unique one for every class. Considering that the other PvE champion skins are like $8 for individual classes even prior to the cosmetic overhaul they did that allow you to swap champion skins between the classes, or at least some of their pieces, then bringing out 6 free champion skins that are unlockable through in-game challenges is like $50 of cosmetics. That is pretty shocking, especially coming from Saber. So it is possible we will see a PvE Heretic game mode at some point in time. Saber did say they'll add something in the game that they previously stated would never be coming, so maybe there will be a Heretic Astartes or even a new faction, so we'll see what they do with that, but for now, I wouldn't expect this anytime soon. Now, the final story I want to talk about today is about Saber's recent interview with Warhammer TV talking about Space Marine 3's release date and dev cycle, on top of whether we will actually see Necrons in Space Marine 3. Now, in this semi-recent interview, the creative director said that we can expect Space Marine 3 to have a 4-year dev cycle just like Space Marine 2 did, and that sounds like we won't see Space Marine 3 for like 4 more years at this point. It's like a 2029 release date at the earliest. That is a pretty damn long time. I think a lot of people expected it to come out like next year or something, but I wouldn't expect it any time before 2029. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Are you excited for Space Marine 3? Do you think a 4-year dev cycle is good for the game? They did also state that they will not be dropping support for Space Marine 2 at all, so really wouldn't worry about that. But then again, this is Saber, so they might slow down development on this game the closer we get to that one, so we'll see what they do. Now, the biggest thing has been an ongoing question for Space Marine 2's community is whether we will see the introduction of Necrons as an enemy faction in Space Marine 3. The campaign has us deal with Necron artifacts multiple times. The entire plot is pretty much due to a Tzeentch scheme plus a Necron artifact keeping the warp and the forces of the Thousand Sons at bay. This has naturally led to community speculation on whether or not we will see Space Marine 3 include Necrons. Now, when asked directly on whether or not we would see a Necron inclusion in Space Marine 3, Saber had this to say. The creative director said, "One of the things about this universe is it's vast. It is almost timeless, and so if you go digging deep down below the surface of a planet, you could find all kinds of things. And so finding what appears to be a Necron tomb, or at least Necron technology below the surface of a world, is not an outrageous thing to happen, but also in the narrative, they're dealing with what seems to be Blackstone-like technology, although it's never expressly stated, and so that directly links to the Necrons." Now, this is very obvious corpo speech since they don't want to give away the upcoming game factions, since Space Marine 3 is obviously very early in its dev cycle, but after the reveal of 500 Worlds, where Titus was promoted to captain of the second company after the death of Acheran, an entirely new new mini-campaign adventure being announced involving no other than the Necrons. With our 3-man squad of Titus, Sergeant Matoris, and Gadriel, it is seeming far more likely that Necrons will show up in Space Marine 3. Now, in Warhammer 40k, Necrons and Tyranids have been pushed a lot recently, alongside the classic flagship Imperium and Astartes factions, so having Titus go up against what is arguably the most notable Xenos faction on top of a to-be-revealed Chaos faction in Space Marine 3 just makes a lot of sense. Titus has been effectively made the flagship character of Warhammer 40k at this point, and he is a very easy way for GW to push their other factions and models to a new audience of people who discovered Warhammer through the recent Space Marine 2 title. So personally, I think we will see Necrons in Space Marine 3, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think we'll see Necrons, Tau, or maybe like Eldari or something? You know, there are a lot of options in 40k. It is a pretty vast universe, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see at least one new Xenos faction. And that's pretty much all I want to cover in this one, guys. Let me know how you feel about the lack of Heretic Astartes in PvE among other upcoming cosmetics. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. I will also be streaming the upcoming Tech Marine launch on the public test server, which is likely coming out this February. And as always, thanks for watching. Take it easy. Bye.